so that you can empower the financial advisor to actually spend as much time with their clients, prospective clients as well, and as little time as possible on those middle and back office pieces, because that is something that technology can help either enhance and make it more efficient or just completely automate for the advisor themselves.
Welcome, ModelFA's David DeCelle here, CEO of ModelFA and your host of the ModelFA podcast. And I'm very excited to bring our guest to you today. He has a very impressive background and he's building something very special and of significance. And I want to introduce Ritik Malhotra, who is the founder and CEO of Savvy Wealth, and also want to send a big thank you to the folks over at Street Cred for bringing us together. Without them being the conduit here, Ritik and I may not have had the opportunity to connect and deliver all this value to you. So shout out to Street Cred as well. But with that said, Ritik, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me here, David.
Well, let's get a sense of your background. So from my understanding on our pre-call, you by no means started in the RIA space in its form that you're operating now. Walk us through a little bit about your journey, because it is impressive, and I'm sure that there's some trials and tribulations along the way that I can pull out of you that will be helpful to the folks listening in.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll actually start all the way back. I grew up in the Bay Area in California, so surrounded by technology in the 90s and 2000s. And growing up, really fell in love with computers and started building internet websites and turned to monetize them and built an internet business around that. So by the time I was in middle school, I was going and doing that. By high school, I had, built this kind of mini internet empire and made enough money online to go and pay for college, and said, well, hey, if, I could do this now, maybe there's a career to be had here. Went to go study computer science and electrical engineering at the University of California at Berkeley, and actually ultimately ended up dropping out of school after my third semester there. And since then, really just fell in love with building from scratch is these, compelling technology products that actually make a really big impact on individuals. So at the time, we had dropped out and started a company in the cloud storage software space. So very different than wealth management, but I promise there's a connection to what we do today. We built that company up, raised money from folks like Y Combinator and other investors, and eventually kind of sold that company to Box, the now kind of publicly traded cloud storage provider, back in 2014. And as Box was, gearing up to go public, which they just did about 7 months or 8 months right after the acquisition, it was a kind of a great way to come in, integrate our software and technology, and really, see how that can really impact and shape individual users there. So that was really the first startup, and I'll come back to that as kind of a key point in the wealth management journey as well. After that, spent some time looking to invest in startups, but ultimately said I want to go back to operating, still had that itch to build. And so we got the same team together and started company number 2. And this time it was closer to wealth management. This time it was more in fintech, where we built software for financial institutions, think like banks and casinos even, and anyone that needed to track money movements and basically have a software or kind of a more performant ledger effectively. We built the software and eventually sold that company to a company called Brex, which is now a $12+ billion privately held company in the corporate card and corporate banking and wealth space. Now, at Brex, spent a couple years building what's called Brex Cash. It was effectively Brex's corporate banking and corporate wealth management arm. And the way that this worked is, for all these corporate customers, we would be able to take their cash and holdings and effectively do treasury management on it, the kind of the basics of corporate wealth management, to earn yield, to kind of invest that money in the right way, while also offering all of the operational components of what a bank offers, all your ACHs, wires, payroll, and all the like. So we built that product and scaled it to, over 7 billion in effectively assets under management. In that, and we kind of registered as a broker dealer, ran all the operations, built all the software. So it was a great kind of fast scaling experience to understand how to get all the operational and regulatory pieces done while also building a very compelling business. Finally, after all of that, in 2021, went and decided to go start Savvy Wealth. And the impetus really for this is something that was in my head for, at that time, about 6 years now. So if you go back to the first startup that we had sold to Box and Box going public in 2015, I'd say, I'd had one of the world's best problems, which was we had a great liquidity event, life-changing amount of money, but no idea what to do with that. And so the advice I had gotten from our investors at the time was to go find a financial advisor. And really, that's how I fell in love with the industry, where, I didn't even know where to start, but really just learning from others. Ended up talking to over 100 different financial advisors, purely just out of curiosity about the industry itself. And actually, over time, worked with a number of them. And there's two things that I learned through all those conversations and working with a number of financial advisors. The first was that it is really important to find the right fit. And that when I say the right fit, I mean, at this time, there was all this parlance about robo-advisors taking over the world. And that was just completely did not make any sense to me, where I thought the actual connection to the advisor, the actual having a real human advisor was super important. And they're able to add a lot of value to me. But the second thing that I learned was both from my experience as a client and also talking to, these 100+ advisors, just purely curious to see how they work and what the problems of the industry are. There was one resonating thing that everyone said, which was they felt that they were constantly getting encumbered by the lack of technology and just kind of encumbered in red tape and operational processes in their day-to-day. So things that aren't really driving value for their client and things that they want to be working on were taking up most of their time. So ultimately, the combination of both of these things in my mind led to this idea of, could we reshape the way that a wealth management firm is constructed so that you can empower the financial advisor to actually spend as much time with their clients, prospective clients as well, and as little time as possible on those middle and back office pieces, because that is something that technology can help either enhance and make it more efficient or just completely automate for the advisor themselves. And so that really is kind of what led us to Savvy. So hopefully that helps kind of illustrate the arc on how we got to here.
Yeah, it certainly sets the stage. And I want to go all the way back to middle school and high school for a moment. So a lot of the folks listening to this podcast have kids that have either yet to reach that age or are at that age. And I'm curious as to what your upbringing was like, because for lack of a better way to put it, in middle school, you nerded out and figured it out, right? And in high school, as you mentioned, if I heard you correctly, you earned enough money online, what sort of years was that in? Like, how was that in the late 90s, 2000s? Where were you, just for context?
So if I remember correctly, it was early 2000s, because it was before high school. Actually, by high school, I'd stopped most of that, and it was really the more enterprising years were in middle school, where just had more time, and that's really when kind of earned enough to eventually go pay for college.
Okay, because like today, we hear of things like people like influencers who are earning money off brand deals. We hear of people on Amazon earning money through drop shipping. But as you put it, you earned enough money along those years to pay for college before earning money online was really a thing, I think is fair to say. And for the parents listening to this, what were some of the things that you can look back at in your own personal upbringing as a child that got you to focus on things that worked your brain to the extent that it earned money, as opposed to maybe getting sucked into, video games or TV or whatever, folks are doing around those ages now? what can you kind of tie that to in your upbringing?
It's a great question, and only I can only answer it reflecting back now. There was a few key things. My parents are immigrants, and they immigrated to the States, and what that meant was growing up in the 90s and even early 2000s was a very kind of modest life. We started in a one-bedroom apartment. There was four of us, including my younger brother, and really kind of expanded from there. And the reason that that's really important, I think, in the story is that it meant my parents were constantly focused on making ends meet and kind of growing and saving and doing the best they could in the early days, which built this very strong work ethic. I would see my parents constantly kind of focus on making sure that that strong work ethic is something they're exemplifying. And by osmosis, it kind of built this, hey, you earn what you work for. And so that was kind of the first piece, just by through osmosis. The second piece that I think they did really well was my dad was early in his career in it's effectively software and just kind of the tech boom that was happening. And so as part of this, he saved up as much as he could, and eventually in mid 90s bought a personal computer to have at home. And for him, that was a huge investment at the time. And I remember a few years ago asking him, how did you or why did you do that when you're still kind of building things up? And the two things he said were, number one, it would help me kind of get work done at home, so it kind of helps him in his career. But number two, I had an inkling that if we brought it here, you had a curious mind at the time that maybe you would actually go and play around and find a passion and career in this. And so he says, at least one of those was a great investment and a great payoff. And so I think the second lesson really here is having the foresight to kind of increase the surface area for your kids it was a great strategy. I don't know if it was that deliberate at the time, because it gave me the ability to really explore different avenues and find passion in areas that I wouldn't have had to have access to, there. So that's probably the first two pieces. And then the final piece I would say is helping enable the curiosity. So naturally, I loved video games and TV like any other kid. But because I had this kind of, we couldn't just go and buy whatever video game that was coming out or my friends are playing at any time. I found that if you combine that, in my mind, it was, hey, if you work hard, you can earn the money in order to get those video games. And so really, I think, given that was my personal goal, my parents kind of found it a well earned system to get to the reward. So they helped me really kind of say, okay, great. If you want to purchase that, you got to earn the money yourself. And to do that, whatever you need, you tell us, like, how can we help you? And so really kind of building the feedback loop and reinforcement kind of saying, hey, this is something you have to earn. And so the combination of all that really is kind of what propelled me to focus on this and learn how to program, build internet sites. How do you make money online and build that feedback loop?
That's cool. And I promise we will get into Savvy and what you're doing there, and specifically integrating AI to free up advisors' time. And I feel like we could spend a couple hours on your background alone and kind of your journey. But the last question I have is, and forgive me for making assumptions, I'm going based off of things that I hear, because we have different backgrounds. My parents were born in the States. Their parents were born in the States. But from my understanding, when folks like your parents have the courage to travel across the world and start over, it's a lot of times less so about them and more so about giving their kids an opportunity to flourish. And I'm wondering, because your parents don't necessarily have a crystal ball and could see that you would have accomplished the things that you've accomplished so far and will accomplish, what you have on the horizon. What was that conversation like when you decided to drop out of school?
It's trying to go back to that moment in time. It's at that point, I think there's a lot that had to lead up to it for me to even be able to have that conversation, which was um, I think I put my best foot forward to that point to show them that uh, I was capable of making good decisions, teaching myself and kind of growing my own skill set and focusing on career and so on and so forth. Both through kind of those middle school and later ventures, but also just focusing on building my skills, working at the right places over summers, and the things that you're doing in college to prepare for a career. So with that in mind, I I'd had this thought of, okay, I want to go and pursue something a little bit earlier where I wanted to go build some sort of a software company. The ideas were still forming in my head. And before I made the decision to drop out, I'd actually applied to two different programs that really support entrepreneurs. The first one being Y Combinator, kind of preeminent incubator, obviously now very prolific. And the second one was called the Thiel Fellowship. So Peter Thiel of fame started this to help young entrepreneurs drop out of school and try their hand at an idea. Both of these programs were much more nascent and not as popular as they are right now. But I thought, hey, look, if you find a community of people, like-minded people around you, at least that'll be a good support network to help me kind of learn and continue growing and working towards these goals. So really, when I went in to have this conversation with my parents, I was very fortunate to have gotten into both programs under the pretense that this was all kind of okay with the family. And so we had probably about a 4 to 6 hour conversation at the dinner table, where it was effectively a mini board meeting where I had to spell out exactly what these programs were. So they had a ton of diligence questions on, and they're obviously wondering, well, who the heck are these guys? Like, what are they going to be? What is the program? Is it a legitimate program? What are they giving you? And then it was to, battle testing like what my plans were, and making sure that I had some sort of a plan. I don't think they actually believed it was going to, go play out as I played it out. And then the last portion was really just giving kind of confidence that, hey, this isn't a, all burning all boats type of route. There's options and opportunities to come back to school and so on and so forth, had that venture not worked out. So that was the conversation. And to their credit, and I still to this day am kind of, it's unbelievable to me that they felt comfortable saying yes. But only after all of this. I remember it was the week after we had sold the company to Box, great outcome, all of that stuff. I learned from some of their friends who kind of I was just visiting home, that almost on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, they themselves were scared and kind of asked others. And so all of the fear that they had, they never once showed that outwardly to me, and always kind of compartmentalized and kind of went to others for advice to really kind of make sure that they're making the right decisions. Because for them, this was a huge risk they had taken to come to the country, and to see their kid, not take the offbeat path was such a wild kind of thought. So full credit to them. They really, I think, they themselves grew out of just, hey, here's the immigrant path and what you would typically see, to this is a land of opportunities. And if we truly believe that, then we should really let him take advantage and of those opportunities, and not just be rigid on the path that we thought we should go.
Are your parents still around?
They're both around.
Awesome. Share this episode with them. It'll make them feel proud of you and show your appreciation as well. And they seem very cool, supportive, but also what's interesting, and I'm going to tie this to advisors today. A lot of advisors that I work with, one of their reservations is they want to be advisors and they don't want to be salespeople. But the reality is that to be successful, in my opinion, in almost anything that you do, you need to sell yourself on what you're doing, sell those around you on the vision, be it family, friends, employees, partners, investors, etc. And all those skills ultimately lead to selling your clients, in this case as advisors, selling them on the vision of what can be possible when they partner with the advisor. So I would just encourage folks listening to not shy away from sales, because you're selling every day in some way, shape, or form. And it's cool that you had an opportunity to sell, so to speak, at such a young age, and deal with objections and deal with challenges. And it sounds like at the dinner table, they force you to think and be able to articulate the vision that you had, as opposed to just keeping it locked up in your head. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a great point. No matter what you do, always have to have a focus on really explaining to others and getting buy-in, which is a form of selling, and no matter how you slice it.
Mm-hmm. So I have your LinkedIn up here, and I just want to read this to help set the stage. So Savvy Wealth is a digital first platform, and I want to unpack that in a little bit. It's a digital first platform for financial advisors centered around modernizing human financial advice. And for advisors who partner with Savvy, they leverage its purpose-built, AI-powered, integrated technology platform to help supercharge organic growth with cutting-edge software and sales and marketing automation. Savvy's proprietary technology empower advisors to increase efficiency, scale revenue faster, and spend more time focused on their clients. So with that in mind, one of the things that I've really enjoyed seeing in our industry is people like you that did not grow up as a financial advisor, but grew up with the tech mind, grew up with the business mind, realizing that our industry, to a certain degree, is still kind of in the Stone Age when you compare it to other industries that are out there. And there's so much opportunity in a good way for improvement and growth. And as one of the words that was in there, modernizing our industry. Even silly things like the SEC marketing rule just recently changed a couple of years ago to allow advisors to collect reviews and testimonials from clients. It's like, all right, like, cool, welcome to 20 years ago. So I just share that as an example, but I would also imagine with all that, how should I say, with that refreshing look on the industry, I'm sure to a degree you have shortcomings within our industry, right? Because you have not, my understanding anyways, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have not been an advisor. So I'm curious to know how you mitigate and learn what the advisor's pain points are. Like, do you have sort of a board of advisors like set up with folks? Like, are you doing, do you have a normal cadence of hearing from advisors to understand what their pain points are, what they want? Like, how are you learning our industry to ultimately apply your business acumen and your technology mind to it?
Yeah, it's actually the before even starting, it was the first thing we were really thinking deeply about. And there's really two pieces that helped. The first one was I actually did spend some time as what I would call the informal advisor, friends and family, and managing the whether it's the family money and other kind of friends and advising on it, so to speak. Over the years, really built that repertoire up, and people would come to me organically in the network to get advice. Of course, I'm not gonna. I think it's very different to be professionally as have a career as an advisor. There's a lot more you have to do. But that was the first glimpse into at least understanding the different kind of technical pieces that are involved in the advice and planning and investments. Now, with that, there was enough knowledge to go and kind of uh, dip my toes and actually start building the company. But it was important that we had this kind of constant, what we call the constant learning machine. And this is a lesson we've learned from past companies that we've built, and I think just building products in general. It's very simple. You always want to talk to the user, and that user could be whomever, whether it's in our case the advisor using some of the software, whether it's the end client. I mean, we build software for internal operations teams to be more effective as well. So whoever the user is that's going to be using this, always want to have a dialogue open. So to that end, from day one, what we did was we set up a kind of a structure and cadence to constantly be collecting feedback, because we said, look, we're all on the same team. The advisors and we're all here together. So we all want to build a platform that enables the advisors and others. So on a bi-weekly basis, the advisor team and the product development team and operations will sit down and have a very kind of structured kind of brainstorm and understanding of where are the pain points, what are potential solutions. They'll be looking at, the designers will come and show wireframes and mockups, and advisors will come in and, using these digital tools, be commenting and really kind of interacting with it. And that's the level of feedback that we've really honed from building compelling products in the past, and I think was missing in the industry. And so that's one version of it. There's other folks on the team. So, for marketing, we have individuals on the team working with the advisors, constantly getting that feedback. Anytime we talk to a prospective advisor, we have someone that's taking diligent notes. Hey, here, what are the gaps that we need to build operationally? On a weekly basis, the individuals are speaking with them. And so it's just this constant, you can distill companies down into very simple things. Talk to your customers, learn and build products that they want, and just do it all over and over again. And if you do that, you'll build a very strong, compelling, resilient company. And so that's what we've done here.
Who would have thought? It is interesting how simple it is, but not necessarily easy per se. So like one of the business development strategies we deploy is the methodology of a partner of mine, which isn't groundbreaking, but it's incredibly effective and people love it, and his name is Dan Allison. And he has this methodology that he's been speaking on for over 20 years. It's called feedback marketing. And essentially what you're doing is you're sitting down with clients that you would love to replicate. And rather than sitting around in a room and theorizing the experience that clients would like to have, you should probably just go ask them how their experience has been and how you can improve. Because there may be some things that you don't even realize that you're doing that are super impactful that you can then standardize and roll out throughout your entire book of business. And then from there, continuing, which I would imagine this is part of your process too, is continuing to educate clients on the various services that the advisor offers. That way they never feel as if they need to go somewhere to get something that you could have helped them with. Just like I would imagine for you, there's probably a lot of features, for lack of a better way to put it, that advisors have access to within your tech stack that sometimes it can be overwhelming and they can forget. So reminding them, hey, remember, we can do this too. You can, utilize the technology in this way as well. And then ultimately through that process, it helps generate introductions because you're getting these clients to ultimately articulate why they love you. And from there, they're going to want to share that experience with others. So all that to say, it's interesting how some of the best ideas and strategies are by no means groundbreaking at all. It's just committing to your point, a particular cadence. I think you said, every other week, cadence of getting together as a team and constantly trying to break and improve and break and improve and always build on top of what is already in existence. So I just want to emphasize the point that some of the most impactful things that you can do are not complicated. It's just caring enough to take the time to have the conversation, frankly. So let's go over to, there's been a lot of, and I've had a couple people on the podcast talking about AI, and I'm curious to know currently what the impact of AI is having on advisors and their business. And then I'll tee up another question, or you can just run with it from the get-go. How do you see it evolving over time? And do you think the advisor will ever be replaced?
I'll start with the second question first, which is the advisor being replaced. And I think this is, constantly been in the headlines since the robo-advisors, probably even before. This is an area, and I'll use some data to kind of back it up, that I think no matter what new AI technology comes out or what anyone thinks, I don't think is ever going to change. And the specifics around it is that the advisor is a key component of the relationship with the client that that AI cannot replace. The way to think about this is, if you think about just kind of if you look at the data actually, so starting with just there's a study from a few years ago where high net worth individuals, anyone that had $1 million or more in investable assets, were surveyed and asked, what percentage or would you want to work with a financial advisor or not? And 85% of them said yes. And 6% of them said that they'd be okay working with a robo-advisor, and that was in that 1 million plus category. And then the remainder were kind of indifferent. And then of the 85% that said they would prefer to work with an actual financial advisor, it turned out that all 85% of them, so 100% of that population, said they didn't care if their financial advisor used a robo-advisor in the background to actually invest their assets. So fascinating kind of uncovery here. And when those individuals were polled and kind of to understand the qualitative nature behind why they wrote those answers the way they did, it turned out that the higher the individuals went in their net worth, the more that they feared that they might do something wrong, or they didn't trust necessarily that a computer-based software would be enough to satisfy their needs, because they imagined that a lot of it could be kind of bespoke things that they hadn't thought about. And they thought only a actual human financial advisor would be able to really help them do that, but even moreover, just give them the mental sort of peace that they were looking for. And if you really read it, it's very common in many other industries too. Think about doctors, right? Even if you're going for a basic checkup, maybe there's nothing wrong, but you get a lot of value in what the industry will call bedside manner. Just like feeling that there's nothing wrong and getting that communicated to you by an actual qualified physician is very different than seeing a report that says lab results are good, right? And you're probably still wondering, like, well, what does that mean? What did it say? And so that's actually the key component here. And fun fact, it actually is the same parts of the brain that get activated when people think about medical fears about their medical and health, so to speak, and fears about financial loss. And so that same kind of fear response is what's driving a lot of that. And so it really is soothing. So that's on the first one. Let me pause there.
Yeah, I just want to comment on, I believe you said 6% of people said that they would be open to a robo style relationship. If I were to guess on the qualitative nature of that, I would imagine that those 6% of people weren't going to become your clients anyways, because those are probably the DIY folks where a robo solution further empowers them to do it themselves, but with some support. So I don't view that as taking away any opportunity, that 6% from advisors at all. My gut tells me those are the DIY folks anyways.
Spot on. Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
So how's AI impacting the industry today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of areas of opportunity, but I think the way that we have seen it actually impact and what we have also utilized internally is really on key areas that are what we call in the middle and back office. So I think the first and foremost, we don't have a view that AI has a place when working directly with clients, right? And just going back to the whole kind of principle of the company, it's the advisor is the best person to work with a client. And that's how we built the entire company, and we will continue to build, which means that the AI technology that exists today can actually help either increase the efficiency of getting some middle or back office tasks done, or completely automate it away. So let me give a few examples on what we've actually found that actually works versus maybe areas that might be opportunities for the future. Two examples of what works really well. Number one is around compliance. One of the things out of many on compliance that advisors may have to do is summarize a meeting and just have a record of, hey, what was spoken about in the meeting, et cetera. And so very kind of easy use case for AI today, and when we say AI, I mean the kind of new form of generative AI you see ChatGPT and the like that type of stuff, is able to summarize an amalgamation of notes. It could be handwritten notes. It could be, just bullet points that are typed up, or even kind of an audio recording that they took of just themselves on afterwards. And that is impactful because you can then summarize those meeting notes and just store them away for compliance purposes. Great, easy kind of one use case. Another use case that's actually been impactful is in helping with marketing and prospecting. Two quick ones there, I think, have been if you want to generate content on a specific topic, that's been something that we've been able to leverage AI to actually reduce time. So that's not something that gets automated completely. But for example, to create a 5,000 word essay on financial planning for medical professionals, as an example, generally what we found is that if we talked about 5 different marketing folks, they said might take about something like 20 hours, 10 to 20 hours, let's say, to write up, edit, do all of that. We were able to get that down to about 2 hours of working time using AI. So it's pretty dramatic kind of efficiency gain there. Among even just prospecting with clients, you can actually personalize a lot of the messaging, especially if you're reaching out to brand new clients, because you're able to ingest all of the publicly available data on an individual or a group of individuals, and actually customize the message as well. So I'll pause there. There's actually quite a bit of stuff we found actually works really well, all in the name of automation and efficiency.
Well, I'm glad you mention that AI is not necessarily used right now to totally automate the marketing, but rather augment and save time. Because one thing that I think has its place as sort of like filler content, but in my opinion, you don't want to lean 100% into it, which is totally automating your marketing and removing the advisor's voice and face and mannerism. So even, with clients that we work with that are doing video content or podcast or short form video, it's, hey, leverage AI to come up with topics, to come up with the initial pass of the script and make it your own. Like, have it empower you rather than replace you. So I'm glad you hit on that specifically. I'm curious to know as well, like, and I don't know if you have the data yet to be able to answer this succinctly or if you're gathering it, but I'd be curious to know, with all the ways that AI is currently being injected into an advisor's business, how much time is actually freed up? So one of the things that we put together or have our clients do is what we call an energy audit. So there's 4 quadrants, and things that you love to do and you're great at, things that you like to do and you're good at, things that you don't like to do and you're good at, things that you don't like to do and you're bad at. And the idea is to automate, delegate, or delete the bottom 2 quadrants entirely. And oftentimes the 80-20 rule applies in that scenario, where 80% of your time is spent in the bottom 2 quadrants. And therefore, in theory, you now, can spend 100% of your time or 5x your time on the top 2 quadrants. Do you have data yet to support, hey, when you properly integrate AI, we found you X amount of hours per week, per month? Have you gotten to that point yet?
Before answering that, I love the energy audits. I do them once a quarter, so big fan. On the data piece, both yes and no. It depends on the kind of different. It depends on the activity being done. So that's how we've kind of broken it down over time. So we do have some data. For example, in that marketing specific case, we've been able to kind of really track and kind of compare with marketing professionals how much time it would take before and after. So that's one area that we have been able to. Other areas, while it hasn't, we have what we'd call maybe more case study type data. So one of our advisors, earliest ones, who's been leveraging the platform, very meticulous about how he kind of tracks his hours and where he spends his time, has kind of calculated based on what he was doing at his previous firm to now, that he now has approximately 2x the amount of free time so that he had in the past when it comes to specific tasks. As an example, it's he does, if he's doing quarterly reviews with his clients, basically the amount of preparation time it took him before to actually prepare is now halved, and is what he's finding with, through the uses of the platform. So those are kind of the best case, best cases we've been able to see. So maybe as a summary, I would say, doubling the amount of free time is kind of in some cases has been very successful. And then in other kind of more measured cases in marketing, 80% reduction in the hours spent to get the same output.
What I like about that is then the advisor can choose, right? They can choose, do I want to continue to grow with this newfound time and increased efficiency? Or do I want to live my life and use that freed up time for family and hobbies and passions, charities, things that fill your cup even more. So it's cool to be able to give advisors the opportunity to decide as opposed to just always being sucked into the business.
100%. And actually, it's something we say all the time. We have some advisors, that they'll use their free time actually to go on the golf course where they're actually meeting prospective clients, but it's also enjoyable. And then we have some that say, look, I just want to take some more time off. Totally fine. We're here to support.
Love it. Well, Ritik, I could keep chatting with you for a while. I do want to be mindful of time. So in an effort to start wrapping up, one of the questions that we ask all of our guests as a way to distill a reading list for folks is a book that's had an impact on them. And the one that you made mention of before we clicked record is called Founders at Work by Jessica Livingston. What brought that book top of mind when I asked that question?
It's a book that I read, I want to say almost 15 years ago, maybe a little bit less. And it is a book that is effectively a compilation of different stories that Jessica Livingston, as an interviewer, she's one of the co-founders of Y Combinator, compiled by talking to successful technology founders. So folks that started PayPal and the like as well. And what was really important and compelling about that book is, to me, getting just even started in the industry, it really opened my eyes up to the nitty gritty of how companies are built, obviously in the written format. And I remember that as a very pivotal, inspirational moment because it allowed me to expand my horizons on, what is actually possible. Because you're able to see these stories of just relentless grit working towards a problem and see, obviously written and articulated by successful individuals, which gives you hope that, hey, maybe you could do that one day as well. So I remember that reading that book, I knew exactly where I was and what I was feeling at the time. And, often I think sometimes you just need a little bit of a push in the right direction and then kind of let the tailwinds take you on.
Well, I'm usually hard pressed to hear about a book that I haven't yet either read or listened to. The books behind me are probably a sixth of the books that I've consumed, which is funny because I never, ever read in high school and in college. It's been since then that I've really fell in love with it. So I just scooped it up. It'll be here tomorrow. So I appreciate the recommendation.
Awesome. I think you really like it.
Love it. Well, awesome. If I'm listening to this and my curiosity is piqued, maybe I just simply want to follow along with your journey and continue to have a pulse on as to what you're doing, or I'm curious to know how Savvy could impact my business. Where should I go? So
you can find us at savvywealth.com. If you sign up there, we're happy to chat. If you want to learn more about the platform itself, you can also follow us on LinkedIn. If you just search Savvy Wealth, you'll be staying up to date with all the updates as well. And look, we're always happy to chat. Maybe it's not the right time to make a move. Maybe it's maybe you're thinking about it. You just want to learn more. Always happy to be a sounding board.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you to Street Cred for bringing us together. Those guys and gals over there are top notch. And Ritik, I appreciate you hanging out with me this morning.
Likewise. This is great, David. Thank you.
Take care.